Welcome, beautiful ladies. Today we are speaking with Julie Winterbourne, certified grief coach, transformational leader, and advocate for the human spirit. Julie Winterbourne is the visionary behind the Resilience Project. With over 2 decades of experience, Julie empowers frontline workers, caregivers, and changemakers to rebuild emotional strength, process unseen grief, and reclaim joy. Through her unique blend of trauma informed practices, expressive arts, and compassionate coaching, Julie creates safe, empowering spaces for profound healing and transformation. Her philosophy is rooted in resilience, creativity, and self kindness, offering customizable tools, actionable strategies to help others navigating life's most challenging seasons. She is known for her warmth, intuitive approach. Julie is dedicated to inspiring individuals to rise stronger and live with purpose. Julie, your work of using expressive arts and creativity combined with other modalities is such a need, among the workforce who give so much to support others. So that workforce that's really giving, that's really supporting others. And I know that you're even working in the corporate space now too. You're facilitating people to get what is on the inside out, to heal from burnout, and develop this deep sense of self kindness. It is so wonderful to have you here, Julie. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm tickled to be here and really honored to be able to be present with everybody today.
Mm. Julie, I'm so curious as we begin here. Like, I'd really love to know, how did your body of work develop? Was it like through your own personal journey of healing? Was there a need that you saw out there in the world, or was it a combination of the two?
It's really such a good question. I kind of have a deep why, and the place that this work evolved from was out of basically a rip in my own soul. I lost my first child to SIDS when she was only 2 months old. Um, and initially, I tried to do my healing through sex, drugs, and rock and roll because I was not very well versed in how best to handle a deep wound of that type, right? So eventually, a couple of years after Jackie passed away, I just woke up with this like ache in my arms. Like my arms still ached to hold her. And I had this intuitive download. I got this like message to go get a bucket and stick it on the back lawn. And I was like, I don't know where this voice is coming from, but I better follow it. And I did. I got this big bucket. The next thing was a folding table out to the garden, and then big paper, and then paint. And I was like, I don't, what paint? I found these drugstore watercolors that were just this old, sad bunch of watercolors. And like it had this brush that had like three little brushed things on the end of it. Was not going to work. I found a little house painting brush. I brought all this out to the back lawn, and I just started swirling the brush in the water and bringing the water onto the paper, bringing the colors into the water and watching that swirl on the page. And I just all of a sudden felt this like ka-chunk, like I dropped into my body in a way that my 23-year-old self had maybe never been that grounded. And I just noticed as I was painting that the paper was receiving my grief and handing me back healing. And it became this dance, this opportunity for healing that just fed me. And I used that technique then to find my way out of that deep grief and start to actually heal in ways that were more supportive to my somatic being. I used that later in life when I was going through other things. And then it wasn't until several years later that I found this as a way I could help other people heal their grief, but also to ideate, also to find solutions to other problems, any things that people might be going through. This intuitive painting process gave them space for the real answers to start coming through. Again, through my own experiences, I kept noticing that the people who were meeting us on our worst days were at their best, but who was supporting them? And that's where the Resilience Project came from, is me wanting to pour back into those people who pour into us every day, whether they're educators, whether they're yoga instructors, whether they are nutritionists, whether they are, right, nurses, physician's assistants, all of these kinds of people need to be poured back into, so that they have the capacity to continue healing people. I have a little saying, I've stolen it from somebody. I don't know, I can't remember who originally said this, but it was about serving from the saucer, right? As though we're a teacup on a saucer, and our teacup is so full that it's overflowing, and that we're serving from that overflow, right? And so that's where this work really is trying to bring people. It's trying to help you fill your cup back up, keep it replenished, and have that overflow from which to serve, whether you're a parent or anybody else in that kind of healers and helpers world. I feel like that's something that we just really, really desperately need.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Julie. It is such a tender space to be offering such a personal journey, but so profound. You know, the loss of Jackie and you rebuilding yourself back up and releasing and expressing what was needed in order for you to at least, I don't know if you fully heal from that. I have not experienced the loss of a child myself, but at least move through that in a way that allows you to open up to the rest of the world. And it sounds like that experience allowed you to process that intuitive art that came out, and good on you for just following those nudges, you know, to go and get the table, to go and get the brush and the little paints that you had, and just start moving your body and letting it flow out. And this idea of filling yourself up so that your cup overflows into the saucer. And that is absolutely what you have done with your life. Like, you have the saucer full, and now you are out there giving to others. And I know from your work that self-care is a little not totally aligned with you, which is super cool. I love this. And that you really want others to begin to shift more into self-kindness and tenderness. You know, self-care is such a buzzword these days. We all hear it, everyone says it, but you talk about something so much deeper: self-kindness and tenderness. And could you begin to explain, like, the difference in this approach and why the shift is so important?
Sure. I mean, I love the idea of self-care. And if we are truly and deeply caring for the self with the things that we do, then it's totally spot on. It's the right thing to do. Unfortunately, self-care has become about being wrinkle-free, not aging. All of these things have started to be called self-care. And I want to bring it back to what's on board. Okay. We only have really control, and even any control is an illusion, but we only have control of what's happening here. Come back to breath. Come back to your ability to control your own heartbeat through that breath, right? Come back to what is actually true and kind and with you. If going to yoga makes you feel full and strong and all of the things that we want from it, please do that. But if yoga becomes something that you resent and it's a to-do on your list and you're just checking the box, don't go. Don't go. I don't think that, I feel like there's so many beautiful things that we may resonate with that you might want to do, and explore them all. Explore them all. Get a bubble bath in, go to yoga, practice Tai Chi, guided meditation, right? There's a million mindfulness techniques out there that might soothe your soul, might calm your nervous system. But if they are not, if they're just creating more jangled nerves, then they're not self-care, and they're definitely not self-kindness, and they are not tender to, ourselves. And, I like to think about it like when you're petting like a dog or a cat, or even like the face of a child, anything like that. It's with tenderness, it's with the intention of soothing, of like expressing love. How are we rubbing our own little cheeks? How are we taking care of our own tender hearts? And that's, to me, what, if I could rebrand self-care, it would look like that kind of stuff. Yeah. But that's why I like self-kindness. That's why I like the word self-kindness. Like, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?
Yeah.
Right. And that same thing, but for our somatic being, ourselves.
Yeah, beautiful. I absolutely love this. And I'm like really curious now, like how does the self-kindness and the creativity, the expressive arts, like how does that come through in your work and how you support others?
No, that's a great question. And I'll go back to my story about painting on the back lawn. While I was standing there was that experience of the intuition of like, oh my God, this is beautiful. This feels so good. I feel present. I feel healing. There was this other part, the inner critic. And she was coming through saying, who the hell do you think you are? You're not an artist. You don't know how to mix colors. Guess what? These are two separate things. This is not your intuition. This is your intuition. I like to say your intuition is like a grandma giving you a little sweet cookie that you need, right? And if she's giving you like something yucky that you don't like, probably isn't your intuition. So, first of all, when we're doing the intuitive painting process, it's about following what feels delicious, what feels important, what feels present. And I like to encourage people: color, shape, image, without thinking about it, what's coming up for you right now. What tool will you use? Where on the canvas will you put it? How will you honor yourself with the brush stroke? Or even if we're writing, if we're doing intuitive writing, same thing. What words want to come through that feel really good, right? And I can point to, actually, these two paintings behind me are both my work. And this piece is done in the midst of a terrible fire that was happening here in Northern California. And, the information's coming through from the news, it's happening. You can see the smoke and the ash in the air. I needed to do something with my body. I couldn't just sit there and hold it. And so I painted. And at a time when my nervous system was out of whack, I found that coming back to this practice, back to this ritual, back to this container that holds me safely, I could process what was coming up for me and let that go. And I think that's kind of where those things come together. It's remembering to trust yourself, to listen deeply to yourself, and to allow yourself to make decisions for yourself based on what is the truthiest truth in this moment for you.
Mm-hmm. I love that, especially that diving into like what feels delicious. Like I speak to a lot about this in my work, like what feels delicious, and that's so unique and different for every person. But getting to know your particular form of deliciousness and
Mhm.
what that self-kindness can envelop within your being is going to take on a different flavor. And when we are expressing ourselves, as you would know, so much of that inner critic, yeah, comes in. And whether it's through art, whether it's through dance, whether it's through singing, like these forms of expression are just innate within our human experience. They are in our DNA. They've been here for centuries. Like these are just ways in which we can let out what is going on in our body. So I'm wondering, like, what are some of the techniques when you begin to explore some art? And I know I've done this for myself, where I've just gotten the paint out, and I am no artist. Like stick figures, no, but got the paint out, and how incredible it was to at least attempt to not let my inner critic come on board and just follow what intuitively felt delightful for me wherever my brush wanted to go, like whatever color it wanted to dip into, whatever shape or like whatever wanted to come out. And I'm curious, like, how would people begin dampening that inner critic? Like, are there techniques to that? Are there?
That's such a good question. And, I think the inner critic is always there because it's our ego, right? At the end of the
Mm,
day, the ego is there to protect us. And so sometimes it's turning towards, not turning away. It's turning towards and embracing and being like, sweetie, I see you because that's you. It's still you, right?
yeah.
Like it's still your you-ness. I love you for protecting me. And just for now, let's explore this. Let's see what will happen. Let's just be a little playful. Let's just be a little bit like throw off the reins. This, I have thousands of paintings, and some of them wind up on a wall. Most of them wind up in a stack because they are not meant for public consumption.
Mm.
To me, it's like my journal pages. I have my journal right here. I would not be like, hey, y'all, come read my pages, right?
Yeah, right.
Because that's none of their business. And frankly, neither are these. I don't
Mm.
really try to like sell my artwork. I mean, I'm open to it at some point in my history. Like they're not like I'm not so hanging on to them tightly, but that's not the point of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
The point of what we're doing here is to be expressed. It's not even as precious as cooking dinner, because cooking dinner means at the end I need to be able to eat this thing, right?
Mm.
It's less precious even than that. And I know we think of art as being something that has to be good or something that I have to show to people. And none of those things are true. Art is something that is inside all of us. We are all artists. We are all makers. We are all creators. It's simply not true that we're not all artists. We've been separated from it through our lives, right? Usually around grade 5, children either identify as an artist or as not an artist.
Mhm.
And the fact of the matter is, like, they're all artists and we all have it within us to be fully and completely expressed. And I feel like we get to give ourselves that permission. And by turning towards that inner part of ourself, that inner child that's afraid of being criticized, we help heal that little piece of ourselves by saying, come on, honey, let's just do this thing right now.
Mm.
Right? Are they ever going to go away? Maybe not.
Mhm.
Maybe not, but give them something to do. Go swing on the swings. Go play in the sandbox. Do something good. I'm going to paint here.
Yeah, I love how you're turning towards that inner critic, that ego side of yourself, also with self-kindness, with reaching arms out, going, "You're welcome here too," and we're gonna go and just see what this is like. We're gonna explore over here and see how this goes. Um, and this is so powerful, particularly when we're like combining those trauma-based practices that you have with the expressive arts and bringing them into a workforce that so needs healing because they carry so much. And so I'm wondering, like, how do creative practices that you're sharing really help people to connect with themselves and heal after trauma, and what is it that you notice in them that shines forth afterwards?
That's such a good question. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about this. So I'll try to be brief and say that, um, you know, I have a friend of mine who's a captain of a fire department here in Northern California, which is a big job. And he's been doing it for 40 something years and maybe 35, nonetheless, a long time. And I asked him one time, like, how do you handle the job? And he said, I kind of pretend like I have a backpack on. And that when I am leaving the station, I take the backpack off and I leave it there and I walk away from it as best that I can. And then I go do something physical for myself. So he
Mm.
happens to be a big golfer. And he loves to barbecue. So he's going to go golf and entertain, and that's going to help him move through some of that stuff. Right. And allow him to be fresh enough to come back to the job. when I insert into that, instead of golf and entertaining, something that is really back here, we are offering people an opportunity to create presence and
Mm,
self-trust and resilience in a
mhm,
way that they already have it there. We're just going to pull the door back a little bit so they can sense it again. And, that's why these practices go over a longer period of time, because it takes a little while for them to remember to keep that door open or open it back up
mm,
and recall that that's in there for them. When we're doing art, whether it's painting or other creative practices, I have several different little things that we do over time. Sometimes it's making a collage, sometimes it's making a little, like a little sculptural type thing or something along those lines. All of those things bring you into the here and now.
mm,
And,
mhm,
I can quote Eckhart Tolle, where he always says that there's peace in the now. And
mm,
so by bringing people into the present, we're shedding that stuff that we look back on, that stuff that we're forecasting towards, and we bring them back into here.
mhm,
And so that's why, like, my approach is three-pronged, right? We do meditation, journal writing, as well as the intuitive artworks. There's
mhm.
also discussion woven into that when we're doing a live program. And I think it's through those things that people build a resilience. And so that backpack does not get heavy during the week.
Yeah. Yeah, as you're speaking, what's coming to mind for me, and this is some of my own personal story, is that I believe your work could have been so beneficial for me. So I used to work within human rights. Many years ago, late 20s, early 30s, I did a lot of travel. I did a lot of working with refugees. And over that time, initially, it was the alcohol and the escapism. And then I developed a very strong yoga practice, very deep spiritual practice. I did a lot of dance, a lot of embody work, a lot of conscious dance, a lot of expressive dance.
Mm.
But what I find really powerful about your work, so, well, anyway, I should say that I ended up on the edge of burnout, didn't quite get there. But even with all the things I was doing, really strong containers around how many hours I was doing at my job, and then doing so much outside of that to support myself. Even with that, I was on the edge of burnout and ended up leaving. What I think is very powerful about your work is that it's held within that container of like, okay, there is grief, there is trauma, there is burnout. These are the signs, and these are the things we can do about it. Listening to you speak, I think that was missing from my piece. Like I was doing all the embodiment stuff, I was presenting, but there wasn't an awareness around how actually difficult my role was and what I was holding in that. So yeah, thank you so much for what you do. And I feel it is so powerful, and I know it's so transformational for people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love using this in group settings, right? In a corporate setting,
Mm,
the neat thing about that is that people are able to sort of crowdsource their healing. And what does that mean? That means that they can lean into their colleagues or other people around the space they happen to work in. If they're in a hospital, for instance, right?
mm,
Nurse can look over to PA and they have a shared language now because they are moving through this together. And they begin to build other kinds of bonds, and those bonds and those connections create a different layer of resilience,
mm,
right? And so it's when we can, and I do one-on-one work as well. Some people really need that super tight container, and I love to do that too. But when we can get into the group dynamic, I find that we're sourcing that Me Too energy from around the circle, and it builds this other kind of three-dimensional shape, right? Where there's this energy pouring into and around, and it becomes this almost like infinite little thing that we build. And I think that there's something to be said for, because maybe I don't know every layer of your experience in the human rights
mhm.
world,
Yeah.
but somebody else does. And that's where that becomes a really deep healing opportunity.
Yeah, I can absolutely attest to that group dynamic Like some people initially find it a little nerve wracking, like, oh, I'm going into this thing. But having people around who fully get, or at least can offer pieces that perhaps you didn't quite see, and it all just fits together in this such beautiful way. And the healing is even more profound than when people are just doing something individually, maybe with a coach, although that too can be really amazing. But that group dynamic, we're connected beings, we're social beings. And when we're with people who have had shared experiences, there's something really powerful that.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Thank you for reflecting that back. Absolutely.
mm. And then I'm curious about like when someone is not just so out there in the world in the sense of no, let me rephrase this. So when someone is used to giving constantly, yeah. So we've got women, men out there giving constantly, whether it's at work or at home. This kind of self care, self compassion, taking time for yourself, perhaps bringing a little pleasure into your days through delight and like what delights me, that can seem almost out of reach and maybe
Mm.
sometimes even selfish. Um,
Mm.
you know, what would you have to say to people who are in that boat, who are like, oh no, I can't do that. I've got to keep just pouring into others. Like, what can you begin to
Mm.
speak about what that actually does for the human and then potentially for others when they can bring in that delight, bring in potentially pleasure, at least like self kindness and care?
It's such a good question. And particularly in the helpers and healers sector of the world, you do find a lot of people who are, um, they don't feel like it's their place to receive. Like receiving is like next level, right? And they're like, I'm not even trying to reach for that. But I would go back to that thing that people say about if you're in an airplane, the airbag drops down, you need to put that airbag on to get yourself safe first and then turn and help, right? Then turn and help. So, and it also going back to serving from the overflow. If I'm so burned out that I can't, I've got brain fog, I've got, chronic stress, it's landed in my body now. I've got gut issues, I've got other kinds of problems because of that. My nutrition is off, my sleep is off. All these things start to happen. You can get yourself all the way to adrenal burnout.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know? Oh, I might have done that once upon a time. And my doctor said, because I was very like into like yoga, Pilates, walking, hiking, doing all the things. And my doctor said, your new exercise is laying flat in a dark room.
Yeah, I often
Lying
say to my
flat in the dark
clients,
room. Thank you, Dr. Brandy. But that's what happens. And that's why that you do need to at some point stop, get your 2 feet on the ground, get a hand on the heart, a hand on the belly, come home, because you have got to keep your own being in a safe space. I can't be a safe space for somebody else if I, in fact, am not a safe space. And so as much as we love those people who are givers, we also need them to have balance in their life that looks like being willing to receive, to be willing to take, to say yes to themselves so that they continue to say yes to other people in the world. And um, I don't know what else to say about that. I feel like it's
Mm,
just comes back to if you can't think straight, you can't be helpful. And if you're not being cared for by your own self,
mm,
and there's another piece I guess I could add to that is like, we teach the world how we want to be treated by how we treat ourselves.
mm, mhm,
So I want to give myself exquisite self-care,
mhm,
right? And I want my daughter to look up to me and say, oh, that's how a woman walks through the world, with leadership, with kindness to herself, with pleasure and joy in her daily life.
mhm.
And when I lead like that, then she leads like that.
Yeah.
And I think that is how we ripple it out into the world.
Oh. And this is where the work that you're doing goes so beyond, the direct people that you have come into your sphere, because it ripples out into the world. Like when beings are changed, when we allow ourselves and embrace this operating from a world, from a different space within ourselves, from a space of that cup to overflowing, so that the source is filled up. And when we have that kindness, when we have that care, when we're embodied, when we're safe in our system, so then when we're resonating with other nervous systems around us, they can also feel safer. Like this ripple effect out has such a profound effect. And it's so subtle that I think people sometimes don't fully grasp it. And I'm so pleased that you're bringing this up today, because it is so powerful and so important, that rippling out. I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you, and for you to share your wisdom with all of us. And are there any final pieces that you would like to add to feel complete? Is there anything bubbling in you?
Hmm. I feel really good about what we've talked about. And I feel like I just want people to feel a little less broken in the world. And that if there's something that I've said that resonates with them, I'm just super grateful for that.
So beautiful, Julie. And if people resonate with you and want to find out more about you, where can they do that?
Oh, they can find me on my website, which is just my name, juleewinterbourne.com. On social media, same Instagram or LinkedIn. I have a Facebook presence as well. You know, you find everybody where you find
Oh,
everybody.
yeah.
And I'm not tricky to find, it's just my name.
I love that. Simple, clear, easy. Just fabulous. Thank you so much, Julie. So delighted. Such a pleasure. Mm.
It was my pleasure indeed. This was fun. Thank you for inviting me in.